In 2011, Brian Briminger appeared to have it all. A decorated Marine who had served 7 years, including assignments to the prestigious Color Guard in Washington, D.C., he had even been photographed at the White House with President George W. Bush. From the outside, Brian embodied the all-American hero persona that drew people to him like a magnet. After leaving the Marines, Brian decided he needed a change. He wanted to decompress, to reinvent himself somewhere far from the pressures of military life. His destination of choice was Panama, a tropical paradise where he could pursue his dream of becoming a singer while living cheaply by the ocean. It seemed like the perfect plan for a fresh start. He wouldn't be going alone. Yvonne Baldelli, a woman deeply in love with her Marine boyfriend, was ready to follow him anywhere. Michelle Valenzuela, Yvonne's sister, remembered how proud Yvonne was of Brian's military service. She used to say things like, "I'm with a Marine," Michelle recalled. She was so madly in love with him that she couldn't imagine life without him by her side. Yvonne had her own dreams for their new life together. Recently divorced and laid off from her management position at Procter & Gamble, she saw Panama as a fresh start and a chance to build something meaningful. She brought along 2 sewing machines, planning to start a clothing business making bathing suits for tourists. Her beloved dog, Georgia, May would complete their new tropical family, and together they would create the paradise life they had always dreamed of. In September 2011, the couple settled into a rented house on Isla Carnero in Bocas del Toro, a remote Caribbean coastal region of Panama. The location seemed perfect: crystal blue waters right in front of their door, cheap beer, and a laid-back expat community where Brian could play guitar at local bars for food and drinks. It was everything they had hoped for and more. The early days in Panama appeared idyllic beyond their wildest dreams. Yvonne sent cheerful emails home describing their new life in glowing terms. Brian already working at local restaurants and bars. "We love it. We wake up and go running, then swim in the ocean every morning." Her messages painted a picture of tropical bliss that made her family back home envious of their adventure. The couple quickly integrated into the local expat scene, becoming familiar faces at the popular hangouts. Joan and Stephen Crabtree, who owned the Cosmic Crab Bar, remembered them as a nice couple who visited frequently and seemed genuinely happy together. Brian would perform at their establishment a couple nights a week, playing guitar and singing for his supper, living the bohemian dream he had always imagined. However, not everyone was impressed with Brian's musical talents. As one local put it with brutal honesty, he played guitar good, but when he started to sing, that's when it went away, like a hound dog on a porch. Despite his lack of vocal ability, Brian's confidence never wavered, and he continued performing with enthusiasm. What stood out more to the locals was the couple's drinking habits. Penny Tom, owner of another waterfront bar, noted that they used to drink a lot, so they were always happy. When pressed about what constituted a lot, she simply replied with emphasis, "A lot." The excessive drinking seemed to be a constant in their daily routine, though it appeared to keep them in good spirits. For Yvonne's family back home, the constant stream of joyful emails and phone calls was deeply reassuring. Her father, Jim Faust, cherished these communications like precious gifts. Yvonne's emails were stories of exactly what her life was like down there. "I could picture it, and I could close my eyes, and it was like I was there." The vivid descriptions made him feel connected to his daughter's new adventure. Michelle believed her sister had found her perfect match in Brian. "I believed that they were going to get married. That's what I thought was going to happen when they got down there." Everything seemed to be falling into place for the couple, and marriage felt like the natural next step in their tropical paradise. But paradise was not what it seemed. Behind the happy emails and cheerful social media posts, trouble was brewing like a storm on the horizon. The reality of their relationship was far more complex and dangerous than anyone back home could have imagined. Right around Thanksgiving 2011, just 3 months after their arrival, the frequency of Yvonne's communications began to drop off dramatically. Michelle's sisterly instincts kicked in immediately. "That's what set me off, the fact that the emails were coming less frequently, and then they stopped completely." The silence was deafening and completely out of character for Yvonne, who had always been a devoted communicator with her family. 2 weeks passed with no word from Yvonne, and the silence became increasingly alarming. Then, on December 14th, Michelle received an unexpected text from an unknown number that would change everything. "This is Brian. May I make arrangements to pick up my truck?" The message was casual and businesslike, but it sent shockwaves through Michelle's system. Shocked to learn that Brian was back in the United States without any warning or explanation, Michelle immediately called the number. "Where's my sister?" she demanded, her voice filled with concern and growing panic. Brian's presence in California without Yvonne made no sense and set off every alarm bell in her head. Brian claimed he had sent an email explaining everything, but Michelle had no memory of receiving such a message. She rushed to her computer and found a message she had somehow overlooked, the first email Brian had ever sent to the family. In it, he claimed that he and Yvonne were no longer together, delivering the news with shocking casualness. When Michelle called Brian back for more details, his story was absolutely devastating. He said they had gotten into a fight because Yvonne discovered he had a child with someone else. According to Brian, Yvonne had simply packed up and left without providing any forwarding address or contact information. The story seemed both plausible and completely wrong at the same time. This revelation was earth-shattering for Yvonne, who was unable to have children due to a medical condition. The thought of the man she loved having a secret child must have been devastating beyond words. It was exactly the kind of betrayal that could destroy someone's world completely. But Michelle had serious doubts about Brian's story from the very beginning. Something felt off about his explanation, and the casual way he presented such life-changing information seemed wrong. When he called 10 days later, still wanting to pick up his truck, she made a counter-proposal that would test his sincerity. "When you come to pick up the truck, I'll be here. And I think it's a good idea that you go with me to the police department since you're the last one to see her."
If you're enjoying this story, kindly do us a favor and subscribe to our channel. It is free and won't cost anything, but it means the world to us. We're just a small channel trying to grow. Thank you, and back to the video.
While waiting for Brian to arrive, Michelle continued searching her emails with growing determination and found another message she had missed. This one supposedly from Yvonne herself. The email read, "Hi sis, just an update. Brian and I are no longer together. I should have trusted my instincts that he is a lying, cheating ass. I'm headed to Costa Rica with a man I met when we first got to Bocas." Something about this email didn't feel right to Michelle at all. The tone seemed off, not quite matching her sister's usual communication style or the way she typically expressed herself. There were subtle differences that only his sister would notice. Little things that made Michelle's instinct scream that something was terribly wrong. Meanwhile, in upstate New York, Yvonne's father Jim and stepmother Lillian were also deeply troubled by the sudden turn of events. For their daughter to suddenly run off to Costa Rica with a complete stranger seemed completely out of character and made no sense whatsoever. They knew Yvonne better than that, and this behavior was completely unlike her. Then came another strange email, allegedly from Yvonne, that only deepened the mystery. "Miss you and everyone at home. Starting to get a little homesick. I'm working on plans to get home as early as the second week of January. I've been living with cliffhangers for a while. Love you sis Yvonne." While the promise of Yvonne's return in January was reassuring, the email felt odd and disconnected. The family held on to hope that she would appear at their planned family reunion, but deep down, doubts were growing. When Brian arrived to collect his truck from Michelle's home, his demeanor was telling and unsettling. He was just in a hurry, Michelle remembered clearly. Calm, very brief, all business. Get his stuff, get his truck, and leave. There was no emotion, no concern for Yvonne's well-being, just cold efficiency. After Brian departed with his vehicle, Yvonne's emails stopped entirely, as if a switch had been turned off. 16 long days passed in complete silence until Michelle sent a worried message to her sister. "I just want to make sure you weren't kidnapped or someone pretending to be you, haha. There's my paranoid, suspicious mind, or maybe too many crime shows." The joke barely masked her growing terror. Yvonne never responded to that message or any subsequent attempts at contact. She also never showed up for the family reunion in January, which was completely unprecedented. This absence was the final confirmation that something was seriously wrong, as Yvonne would never miss such an important family gathering. Convinced that something was terribly wrong, Michelle turned to her cousin, a technology expert, for help. She asked him to trace the IP addresses of the emails supposedly sent by Yvonne from Panama and Costa Rica. This technical investigation would either put her fears to rest or confirm her worst suspicions. The results were absolutely shocking and confirmed Michelle's worst fears. While the early emails from Panama had indeed originated there, the later email claiming Yvonne was in Costa Rica had actually been sent from the United States, specifically from the Dana Point, California area where Brian was now living. The geographical impossibility was undeniable proof of deception. Most damning of all, this email shared the same IP address as the message Brian had sent to Michelle. The inescapable conclusion was that Yvonne's email account had been compromised, and someone was impersonating her with calculated precision. The technical evidence was irrefutable and terrifying. That's when I knew that he did something to her, Michelle realized with crystal clarity. It's not a missing person anymore. It's murder. I thought my sister's dead, and I'm never going to see her again. The weight of this realization was crushing, but it also gave her the determination to seek justice. Michelle immediately took this evidence to the FBI, where she met with Special Agent Andrew Masters. The Bureau launched a full investigation based on the compelling evidence Michelle had uncovered. Michelle also contacted the State Department for additional assistance. The embassy confirmed there were no records of Yvonne leaving Panama or entering Costa Rica, which completely contradicted Brian's story. As the FBI investigation began in earnest, Yvonne's family made a horrifying discovery that would change everything they thought they knew about Brian. In the spring of 2012, just months after Yvonne's disappearance, Brian was living an entirely different life in Southern California, as if nothing had happened. Photographs surfaced showing Brian happily married to a woman named Kristen Werkoven in what appeared to be a joyful beach wedding in La Jolla. The couple looked genuinely happy, celebrating with champagne and a limousine, completely carefree and blissful. The images were like a slap in the face to everyone who knew about Yvonne. What made this discovery so shocking was the timeline, which revealed the true depth of Brian's deception. Brian had proposed to Kristen just days after Yvonne disappeared in Panama. The woman he claimed to be searching for was already being replaced before her fate was even known, showing a callousness that was breathtaking in its cruelty. Even more disturbing was the revelation that Kristen was the mother of Brian's secret child, the same child whose existence had allegedly caused the fight that drove Yvonne away. Kristen had worked at the White House, where she and Brian had first met during his military service. The web of lies was becoming clearer and more disturbing. The photographer who captured Brian and Kristen's wedding, Jack English, had no idea of the dark story behind the seemingly happy images. She looked very happy, very in love, as if she found her Prince Charming, he remembered innocently. But this Prince Charming had left another woman in Panama just 2 weeks earlier, possibly dead. Unable to wait for official channels to act, Yvonne's family traveled to Panama to search for answers themselves. They connected with Don Winter, a legendary investigator and ex-U.S. intelligence officer known for solving difficult cases in Central America. Winter had a reputation for getting results when others failed. Winter was immediately convinced that Brian was involved in Yvonne's disappearance. I think the chances that she's running around in Costa Rica somewhere with some other dude are damn near zero, he told the family with characteristic bluntness. His experience told him this was a murder case, not a missing person case. His strategy was to put pressure on the Panamanian government while conducting their own investigation. The family gave DNA samples in case any remains were found, and Winter organized a press conference where Panamanian police officially named Brian Briminger as a suspect in Yvonne's disappearance. The public announcement was a crucial step in building pressure. The announcement reverberated around the world, with news outlets picking up the story of the Marine who had returned to the United States, gotten engaged, and married another woman within weeks of his girlfriend's disappearance. The international attention put intense pressure on all parties involved and made it impossible for Brian to hide from scrutiny. As the search intensified, witnesses began coming forward with disturbing information about Brian and Yvonne's relationship. The picture they painted was far different from the happy emails Yvonne had sent home, revealing a dark truth that had been carefully hidden from her family. The paradise they thought she was living in was actually a nightmare. Local bar owner Jeff Salzman revealed that he had seen clear evidence of domestic violence that shocked him to his core. "As I recall, it was black eyes and blackness around the face and bruises," he said, describing Yvonne's appearance with obvious distress. She was trying to hide it and not speak of it. The image of Yvonne suffering in silence was heartbreaking. Other locals described Brian as a scary person and detailed multiple incidents of verbal and physical abuse that painted a picture of escalating violence. The reality was that behind Yvonne's cheerful emails, she was living in constant fear and trying to hide the truth from her family to protect them from worry. The family and volunteers began searching the treacherous, swampy areas around the island where the couple had lived. The terrain was incredibly dangerous, filled with bugs, spiders, snakes, and thick jungle growth that made every step hazardous. Despite the dangers, they pressed on, driven by love and determination to find answers. Despite finding various items including purses, medicine bottles, and even a U.S. passport during their exhaustive searches, none of the discovered items belonged to Yvonne. Each false hope was crushing, but they continued searching with unwavering determination. The jungle seemed to swallow evidence as quickly as they could look for it. Meanwhile, back in the United States, the FBI confronted Brian at his California home in a crucial interview. Special Agent Andrew Masters questioned him for more than 4 hours while Brian babysat his young daughter, creating a surreal domestic scene against the backdrop of a murder investigation. Brian stuck to his story about Yvonne leaving him for another man. But when confronted with the damning email evidence, he began to stumble and contradict himself. Most significantly, Masters noticed a white Sony Vaio laptop in Brian's apartment, the same type and model of computer Yvonne had taken with her Panama. The coincidence was too striking to ignore. Analysis of Yvonne's laptop revealed disturbing evidence that painted a clear picture of what had really happened. About 2 weeks before her murder, Yvonne had taken a selfie showing a massive black eye and swelling on her face, clear photographic evidence of the abuse she was suffering and trying to hide from her family. Even more chilling were Brian's internet searches discovered on the computer, which revealed his guilty knowledge and planning. The morning after Yvonne was killed, Brian had searched for how to remove blood from a mattress, showing his immediate concern with covering up evidence of his crime. Investigators also found compelling evidence that Brian had used Yvonne's debit card to withdraw cash from ATMs in Costa Rica, with security camera footage clearly showing him making the transactions. This financial fraud was another piece of the puzzle that showed his deliberate deception and theft from his victim. Don Winter made another crucial discovery on Brian's Facebook page, where he had sold a machete after returning from Panama. In the comments section, Brian had made a chilling joke about the weapon that revealed his twisted sense of humor, saying he had only used it to chop up one stripper. The comment was deeply disturbing in retrospect. Agent Masters managed to track down the person who had bought the machete from Brian in Panama, recovering the potential murder weapon. The weapon was heavy and razor-sharp, easily capable of inflicting massive damage, and perfectly suited for the crime that had been committed. On June 26, 2013, nearly 2 years after Yvonne's disappearance, Special Agent Andrew Masters finally placed Brian Briminger under arrest. "Turn around, put your hands behind your back," Masters told him as he slapped on the handcuffs, finally bringing some measure of justice to the case. Michelle learned of the arrest through a text from her father that simply read, "They got the SOB." The sense of relief was overwhelming. Finally, someone believed their story and was taking action. After months of feeling helpless, they finally had hope that justice would prevail. Brian was initially charged with 13 felonies related to the cover-up of Yvonne's death, but not murder itself. Without a body, prosecutors felt they didn't have quite enough evidence for the most serious charge. However, they were confident that more evidence would emerge as the investigation continued. That confidence would soon be vindicated in the most definitive way possible. In a crucial break in the case, a local worker clearing brush on Isla Carnero came upon a duffel bag that had been hidden in the dense vegetation. When he opened it, he discovered skeletonized human remains that would finally provide the answers everyone had been seeking. DNA testing confirmed what everyone feared but needed to know. It was Yvonne Baldelli. Her remains were found just a few hundred yards from where her family had spent days searching the jungle. So close, yet hidden well enough to avoid detection for years. The discovery was both a relief and a devastating confirmation of their worst fears. The autopsy revealed the horrific truth that would haunt her family forever. Yvonne had been dismembered, most likely after being stabbed in the back at least twice. The brutality of the crime was shocking even to experienced investigators, showing the depth of Brian's violence and callousness. Despite the overwhelming evidence against her husband, Kristen continued to stand by Brian with unwavering loyalty, refusing to speak with investigators or reporters about the case. Her continued support baffled everyone who knew the facts of the case, but she remained committed to her husband despite his obvious guilt. As the case moved toward trial, another tragedy struck the family that would test their resolve even further. Michelle Valenzuela, who had dedicated her life to finding justice for her sister, was diagnosed with aggressive cancer in the spring of 2014. The disease was advanced and fast-moving, giving her little time to complete her mission. Given just weeks to live, Michelle made a heroic decision that would ensure her sister's story would be told. Though weakened by chemotherapy and barely able to stand, she agreed to give a deposition while she still could, ensuring her testimony would be preserved for Brian's trial no matter what happened to her. In her final act of love for her sister, Michelle faced Brian across a courtroom table and told her story with remarkable strength and clarity. The effort exhausted her completely, and she passed out after giving her testimony, but she had accomplished what she set out to do. Her courage in the face of her own mortality was inspiring to everyone who witnessed it. Days later, Michelle died, but her courage had ensured that Yvonne's story would be told and that justice would ultimately prevail. Her determination had kept the case alive when others might have given up, and her legacy would live on in the justice system's pursuit of her sister's killer. In 2016, investigators made a final breakthrough that would seal Brian's fate once and for all. When they examined the machete Brian had sold in Panama, they found Yvonne's blood and DNA hidden under the handle where Brian had failed to clean it completely. Brian had cleaned the blade, but missed the interior of the handle where evidence remained preserved. The forensic analysis was conclusive and irrefutable. This was the weapon used to dismember Yvonne, and Brian's DNA was also present on the handle. The physical evidence was so compelling that it eliminated any possibility of reasonable doubt about Brian's guilt in the murder. Faced with this irrefutable proof, Brian finally realized he couldn't lie his way out of the charges that had been mounting against him. The evidence was overwhelming, and his legal team advised him that fighting the charges would be futile. Within a week of the DNA evidence being presented, he pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. At his sentencing hearing, Brian finally admitted to killing Yvonne Baldelli after nearly 5 years of lies and deception. His confession was matter-of-fact and showed no real remorse, confirming everyone's impression that he was a master manipulator who only cared about himself. His apology to the family rang completely hollow. They saw him as a master manipulator who had conned everyone around him throughout his entire life. Jim Faust spoke for the family when he said, "Brian Brimminger is a con artist. He had our daughter conned. He had his new wife conned. He had her family conned. He was able to live a double life, sometimes a triple life, and people buy what he says, but his actions show that he's not the person he says that he is." Brian Brimminger was sentenced to 26 years in federal prison for the murder of Yvonne Baldelli. His earliest possible release date is February 2037, when he will be an old man who has spent the best years of his life behind bars paying for his crimes. With the case finally closed, Yvonne's remains were returned to her family for a proper burial. The legal proceedings had taken years, but now they could finally lay their loved one to rest with dignity and honor. The wait had been agonizing, but they had never given up hope that this day would come. In a ceremony befitting someone who loved the ocean, they laid her to rest at sea in a beautiful and moving tribute, to get her remains back and be able to give her a dignified resting place. "I can sleep better at night knowing that she's not rotting in some jungle," said her father with obvious relief. "Knowing that she loved the ocean, we were able to put her in a place that she loved. We brought her home." The ceremony honored two people that day, Yvonne and her beloved sister Michelle, who had battled a decorated Marine to the end and won. Michelle's courage and determination had made justice possible, and her memory was honored alongside her sister's in a touching tribute to sisterly love. Today, Kristen and Brian Briminger remain married despite everything that has happened. She continues to support and visit him in federal prison, maintaining her belief in his innocence despite his guilty plea and detailed confession. Her loyalty is both touching and baffling to those who know the facts of the case. The case serves as a stark reminder that evil can hide behind the most respectable facades and that appearances can be deceiving. Brian Briminger, the decorated Marine who once stood guard at the White House, proved capable of the most heinous betrayal of trust imaginable. His military service and clean-cut appearance masked a monster who was capable of unthinkable violence. But the case also demonstrates the incredible power of family love and determination in the face of seemingly impossible odds. Without Michelle Valenzuela's relentless pursuit of the truth, Brian might never have been brought to justice. Her courage in the face of her own mortality ensured that her sister's killer would not escape punishment, no matter the personal cost. Michelle's investigation skills and refusal to accept Brian's lies were instrumental in building the case against him. Her technical savvy in tracking IP addresses, her persistence in questioning inconsistencies, and her courage in confronting a potential killer all contributed to the eventual conviction. The international nature of the case also highlighted the importance of cooperation between law enforcement agencies across borders. The FBI, Panamanian authorities, and local investigators all played crucial roles in solving the case and bringing Brian to justice. Don Winter's expertise and connections in Panama were invaluable in navigating the complex legal and political landscape of international criminal investigations. His ability to generate publicity and pressure authorities to act was crucial in keeping the case alive when it might have been forgotten. The case also showed how social media and digital evidence have revolutionized criminal investigations. Brian's Facebook posts, email communications, and internet search history all provided crucial evidence that would have been unavailable in earlier eras. The digital trail he left behind was impossible to erase completely. In the end, Yvonne Baldelli found her paradise, not in the tropical waters of Panama where she was murdered, but in the ocean where her family laid her to rest, surrounded by the love that never abandoned her, even in death. The paradise Brian Briminger promised turned out to be a lie, but the love of Yvonne's family proved to be eternal and unbreakable. The tropical paradise of Panama, which had seemed like such a dream destination, became a nightmare that destroyed multiple lives. But through the determination of Yvonne's family and the dedication of law enforcement, justice was ultimately served, and her memory was honored in the way she deserved. In that love, and in the justice that was finally achieved, Yvonne found the peace that had been denied to her in life. Her story serves as both a cautionary tale about the dangers of trusting appearances and an inspiring example of how love and determination can overcome even the most heinous crimes. The paradise she sought was finally found in the eternal rest granted by her family's love and the justice system's commitment to truth.